Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about the Dennis Wheatley Library of the Occult. This was a series of books published by Sphere between 1974 and 1977. There were in total 45 books produced. Initially, I think Dennis Wheatley was hoping to produce a series of perhaps 300 or 400 books, but when he died in 1977, Sphere brought the series to an end. So basically that is the series of books I'm going to talk about. It's not my main genre. I'm much more interested in science fiction and fantasy, not really into horror or the occult. But there are one or two books in the series that are of interest, perhaps, to more mainstream genre readers. Right. Now, each of the 45 books, as I understand it, I haven't checked, but I understand it has an introduction by Dennis Wheatley, probably of about 2 pages. From reports I've seen, if you want to read the books, it's probably best to avoid the introductions. They can be full of spoilers, and Dennis Wheatley was all over the place with some of these introductions. Now, that is only what I've read. So, but anyway, that's as much as I'm going to say about his intros. The reason I'm doing this video is at the end of October, I ordered a complete set of Dennis Wheatley Library of the Occult books. They were in general averaging about good, so varying from fair to very good. And the reason I ordered them is that I already had 30, and I thought the hassle of trying to find the other 15 individually would have taken too much time and effort. So I decided to accept some issues with condition. If I go back a little bit in terms of my history, about 20 years ago, I remember talking to a couple of collectors about this series, and they at that time were saying how difficult it was to collect all the books. Some are relatively common, but some are very uncommon and can be expensive to buy in nice condition. Always into a challenge, I started picking up any copies that I could find at a reasonable price. I didn't buy off the internet, but I did buy if I saw them in a charity shop or something like that. And over the next 20 years or thereabouts, I found about 15. And then a couple of months ago, in one of my book hauls, I mentioned the fact that a friend was willing to part with some of his, and I ended up increasing my count to about 30, which left me 15 to go. And with only that number needed, I thought I would put in the effort to get the rest. But I had a look online and I wasn't overly keen on buying individually. They were either too dear or the condition wasn't good enough for the price. And so I didn't do anything. But then I saw a whole set up on eBay. I didn't bid the first time it was listed, and the price gradually came down. And so in October, I bit the bullet and ordered the complete set. So I'm now going to show you my complete set. Of the 30 I already had, I think I upgraded about 3, and those only marginally, and the others I inserted into the set. So about 15 of the ones I'm going to show you are the ones that I bought, which leaves me within the region of 30 duplicates. Now, I paid well over what I thought that my 15 might cost in the condition they were in, but I hope that at some point in the future I'd be able to sell the duplicates. At the end of this video, something that will not be of interest to very many, but what I will do is show you the ones I now have as spares. Right, so a little bit about the collectability. As I've said, some are fairly common, some are relatively easy to find in nice condition, but some are extremely difficult, and you'll be very lucky to find them anywhere. The books can be prone to a little bit of fading, so 1 or 2 of mine have relatively minor spine fading. As far as I'm aware, very few went to reprints, maybe none. As far as I can recall, every copy I've ever seen has been a first printing. I have a vague recollection that I did once see 1 or 2 advertised as second prints, but checking recently I could not find any proof that any of these went to second printings. So that covers all I'm going to say about collectability. As I go through, I might give an indication as to which ones I think are uncommon and which ones aren't. But given that so few copies appear, I'm not guaranteeing that what I say about that will be absolutely correct. So now I'm going to start showing you what is my current collection. I'm not going to go out of my way to get regradings, but again, if ever I see a nice copy, I may upgrade. And the series starts with this one, Dracula by Bram Stoker. Now, this is one of a number of titles and a number of authors that you will be familiar with in this series. Some may not be familiar, but there are a fair sprinkling of familiar names. Now, as you can see, this one has a faded, I should show you the spine, a slightly faded spine. It's not totally obvious, but it is slightly less red than the covers. So that is the first one. Again, another familiar title, and I think there was also an Ace edition of this, and this is The Werewolf of Paris by Guy Endore. And this is something I've never read. So that is a nice copy. The first 6 books I think were produced in the first month these were issued, but then it dropped to perhaps 1 or 2 a month. This is book 3, Moonchild by Lester Crowley. Number 4, Studies in Occultism. I'm not certain. This may be a factual book rather than fiction. The series has a mixture of fiction and some non-fiction. talking about the study of occultism, though maybe some of you will feel that's fiction anyway as well. Book 5 is Carnacki the Ghost Finder. Now, as far as I'm aware, all of the books in the series were reprints, and some were reprints of titles that have appeared in many different editions. So certainly there have been a number of editions about Carnacki the Ghost Finder. So I will not say more about that. I have never read this, and I think I have a couple of other different editions of this book. The last one that was issued in that first month, number 6, The Sorcery Club by Elliot O'Donnell. And this does sound like an interesting story. I did watch another video about the Dennis Wheatley Library of the Occult, and from what I can gather, Dennis Wheatley in his introduction includes no end of spoilers. He virtually tells you the whole plot of the book in his intro. So I would emphasise that you might do well to not read his intro until after you finish reading the book, if you want to read. Next, this is a rather tatty one. This was the second one out of the lot that I bought. And this is Harry Price Ghost Hunter by Paul Tabori. So it's got a crease there, crease at the top, crease at the bottom. I think the spine is faded. There's creases on the back cover. So I decided to accept that by filling the gaps I would end up with a few that weren't in brilliant condition. Next, The Witch of Prague by E. Marion Crawford. From what I've read, this is a well thought of horror story. Perhaps not one of the easier ones to find in really nice condition. Next, and this is an anthology. So it's got some well-known writers in it. Wilkie Collins, Sir Walter Scott, Edgar Allan Poe, Washington Irving, and others. My apologies that all of these books have been bagged, so apologies if you get issues with reflections. So that was one of 3 anthologies edited by Dennis himself. Carrying on, The Prisoner in the Opal by A.E.W. Mason. This is one of the more common titles and generally not too difficult to find. But we then go on to one that is difficult to find. The Devil's Mistress by J. Brodie Innes. Carrying on. You and Your Hand by Chiro. Never heard of that person. This one has bad spine creasing and 1 or 2 minor cover creases, so perhaps not the greatest. Carrying on, another spine faded one, Black Magic by Marjorie Bowen. I'm going to apologise, say I don't know that much about a number of these books, so I can't say too much about them. Next is Real Magic by Philip Bonewitz. This is nice condition. Next is Faust by Goethe. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This series tends to alternate between thin and thick books. So,
Okay, I've found this on the web for Send to alternate between thin and thick books. Check it out.
Sorry about that. That was the iPad reacting to my voice. I hope it doesn't do that again. The next book is Uncanny Tales, the second anthology in the series, edited by Dennis Wheatley. And again, some well-known writers: Arthur Machen, E.F. Benson, Walter de la Mare, Dennis Wheatley himself. Next, The Gap in the Curtain by John Buchan. Again, relatively easy to find, that one, I think. The Interpretation of Dreams by Zola. Next is Voodoo by Alfred Metro. Next is The Necromancers by E.F. Benson. One thing I will say, I have looked at about a dozen of these and not one of them mentioned who the artist is. So it's possible that all 45 do not name the artist, but I cannot swear to that. I've not checked every one. Number 21 is Satanism and Witches, selected by Dennis Wheatley. So another anthology, I'm presuming. And the next one, again, not brilliant condition, The Winged Pharaoh by Joan Grant. Lots of spine creases on this one. Labels which I haven't tried to remove. As I say, I'm sometimes reluctant to try and remove old labels. I'll briefly pause it. So I've just completed the first box. So I'll get the second box organised to go through with you. Right, carrying on, I'm going to start the second box. Because I've run out of shelf space, I am keeping this set in boxes. And number 23 is Down There by Heisman's. Again, I suspect the spine is faded. I'm not going to mention that again, but several of these do have slightly faded spines. Next is The Monk by Matthew Lewis. Again, a well-known author. This one is Horror at Fontenay, Alexandre Dumas. Next, The Hellfire Club by Donald McCormick. Next is The Mighty Atom by Mari Corelli. Next is The Affair of the Poisons by Francis Mossica. This one has a spine crease and the spine is cracked. And oddly enough, the other copy of this that I've got has the same issue. So maybe that book is prone to spine cracking. Carrying on, The Witch and the Priest by Hilda Lewis. Death by Enchantment by Julian Franklin. And then probably the thinnest one of the whole set, Fortune Telling by Cards by Ira B. Prangley. Again, not an easy one to find, I suspect, that one. And a Peter Saxon book, Dark Ways to Death. And a well-known author. It's The Ghost Pirates by William Hope Hodgson. Again, another famous title, The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. A number of these came out at the same time there were other versions available. For some, that may have affected the number that ended up in circulation. Next one, The Greater Trumps by Charles Williams. Next, The Return of the Magi by Maurice Mager. I'm not certain if I'm pronouncing that right. Next is the third anthology titled Uncanny Tales. This is definitely the most difficult of those three to find. I certainly looked around for it and struggled. This is not the greatest condition, some spine creasing, but if you see that one, be aware it is quite uncommon. Next, and not a very good copy, and condition's a bit iffy, The King is a Witch by Evelyn Eaton. Next one, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Sorry, ignore that bit of paper, it's not signed, just saying it's very rare. I'm saying it's rare because I've read that people in America have found it very difficult to find this book. I think with some reprinted titles, often they don't cross the Atlantic. So sometimes we get the same thing in the UK. So I think, although I'm saying this is rare, it's probably much rarer in the States than here, and can command a significant premium. Again, a well-known author, The Curse of the Wise Woman, Lord Dunsany. Getting towards the end, a few more to go. Again, another well-known author, Sax Roma. This is Brood of the Witch Queen. Quite like that title. Sorry, that cover art, but still. As I say, I don't think the author is named in these, but I haven't checked every one. Next, really poor condition and not an easy one to find. Brazilian Magic, Is It the Answer? By Pedro McGregor. As you can see, several creases on this. some rubbing, some creasing. So one of the poorer ones in my collection. 3 to carry on. Next, a Jack Williamson, Darker Than You Think. So it's described as the classic novel of occult terror. So for anyone who's keen on Williamson, that's an interesting book. Next is War in Heaven by Charles Williams. And the final one, number 45, Morwin by John Cowper Powys. This was the last one in the series and probably the dearest. This one issue price 95p, whereas I think some of the early ones were only 40p. So that completes my collection that I've put by. I'm pleased to have completed it. As I say, I think I paid well, I won't say I paid over the odds, but I paid far more for the set of 45 than I felt the ones I was missing were worth. So I hope to sell some duplicates to basically mean that the ones that I got to fill my collection were at a reasonable price. For those who are not interested in seeing my duplicates and spares that are available, I suggest you complete watching now. But for those who want to see the ones I've got, I will pause the video and come back with my showing you my duplicates. Okay, I'm now ready. I'm going to show you my duplicates. I'm going to start with number 1, Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is relatively uncommon in nice condition. This is not perfect. There's a bit of rubbing, especially down the spines, but generally it's in quite nice condition. So in this sort of condition, and I am doing things a bit on the fly, this is maybe worth £15 or £20. Number 2, The Werewolf of Paris. Again, relatively uncommon in nice condition. This has a faded spine, but again, not dissimilar to the first one in terms of price. 3rd, Moonchild. Again, a faded spine. Slightly more common. Studies in Occultism. Again, some variable fading on the spine, so again, perhaps not that dear. Carnacki the Ghost Finder. This is a nice condition copy, but with spine fade again. So that probably goes for about a tenner. Sorcery Club. Now this one does have a spine crease, cover creases, so this wouldn't be that dear. It does sound to be an interesting novel from what I've seen, so that's that. Next one, The Witch of Prague. Now this has a plastic cover that's been stuck in. So it's protected the book. It does have a slight corner crease, but as is typical with such things, you get the trouble with aging sellotape. So generally nice condition, but not ideal for collecting. Uncanny Tales 1. This has a cover crease, so perhaps not the greatest condition. Prisoner in the Opal. This is nice condition, fairly nice, but one of the slightly more common ones. Some minor corner wear. That will carry on. The Devil's Mistress by J. Brodie Innes. This is one of the much more difficult ones to find. When this was, well, it still has the writing in it saying it was £30 in the charity shop in which it was in. This is in lovely condition, but it does have a 1 or 2 centimetre crease on the top corner and the remainder mark, but generally the pages are white and clean, so that's unusual, and that is one of the more difficult ones. Black Magic, fairly nice condition, but rubbing on the spine edges. There is a spine crease, a little bit of spine fading, but generally not bad condition for that one. Real Magic, again fairly nice condition, but it does have evidence of label removal, and that can't be tidied up because it's taken a little bit of the cover off as far as I can tell. So I'm leaving that well alone. But otherwise, a nice condition book. Faust, again spine fade, generally in nice condition. Being such a thick book, it's not always easy to find uncreased. Now a rather poor condition copy, Uncanny Tales 2. It's got scratches and creases and rubbing, some fading. So not a valuable book. The next one, The Gap in the Curtain by John Buchan. Again, some fading, but otherwise generally quite nice condition. I'm just going to pause it so I can get the next lot ready. Carrying on with my duplicates. Voodoo by Alfred Metro. Generally quite nice condition. Quite an interesting bit of art in the circle. A little bit of wear, but generally quite nice. Probably slightly more one of the slightly more difficult ones. The Necromancers by Benson. Basically, because of the edition, that would probably be £10 or that sort of order. Satanism and Witches. Nice condition, not perfect, but probably one of the most common of the series. And I have a second copy as well of that one. Down There by Heisman's, another one with sun fading. Sorry, it's a problem with the ones I've bought. They do seem to be prone to sun fading, some of them. The Monk, nice condition, very little wear. Horror at Fontenay. This is one I've seen several copies of over the years. So nice condition, but not too expensive because of the fact it's fairly common. Hellfire Club by Donald McCormick. Number 26 we're up to now. So that, because of the condition, is slightly more expensive. The Mighty Atom by Corelli. Again, very nice condition. So basically the value there is in the condition rather than the rarity. Dark Ways to Death. Again, generally very nice condition. So again, you pay for that one, you need to pay for condition rather than. Next is The Ghost Pirates by William Hope Hodgson. Again, slightly uncommon and nice condition. Next, The Affair of the Poisons. This is the one I mentioned that is also cracked. It has some pictures in the middle. And this is a bit cracked, and I think one of the pictures is loose, so I'm not going to open very much there. So it's not that common, it's nice condition, but it does have a cracked spine. For some reason, this has just got slightly out of order. I've gone back to the Ghost Pirates. So I have a second copy of the Ghost Pirates. The Phantom of the Opera. Again, a remainder line. Not a particularly difficult one to find. So there you're paying for condition. The Greater Trumps by Charles Williams. Not an easy one to find, and generally that's in quite nice condition, so a bit more expensive. Next, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Not easy to find. This one does have evidence of a stamp, a bad crease on the back cover. So if this was in America, it would probably be dearer, but in this country, given the condition, not that expensive, but slightly expensive. Next, Brood of the Witch Queen, Sax Roma. Generally nice condition, so again you're paying to some extent for the condition. And the final one of my duplicates, War in Heaven by Charles Williams. This is number 44. So I have now shown you all of my duplicates. If anyone wants or is interested in them, and I'd love to sell the whole lot in one go, I'd be happy to discount if someone takes the lot. Please get in touch. Otherwise, it will go back into my spares trays, and I am running out of space for spares. So I really will have to think about doing something about selling some of my spares. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. It's quite a long one for me. So I'm now going to sign off. Bye.